Welcome, everybody, to Spark Animation 2021. My name is Marina Antunes, Festival Director and Chair of the Vancouver ACM SIGGRAPH chapter. Very excited to welcome you to this Meet the Filmmakers presentation with the writer, director, and producer of Back Home Again, Michael Mankowski. Welcome to Spark, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
So we were talking a little bit just before we started, and I didn't realize that you had a history with Spark. But before we talk about that, tell us a little bit about yourself and where your passion for animation started.
Yeah, I've always loved animation. I was born and raised in Fort McMurray, Alberta, and Alberta filmmaker, and I'd done a couple short films and projects prior to getting into animation. I had won in 2016 the Best Short Film Award at the Alberta Film and Television Awards. And I had raised some money to make my first feature film, raised $1 million to make a movie with Tom Green. And I was gearing up to make that with Tom and Norm Macdonald. And I had rented this land and bought these bear cubs, and we're raising them, and have a bobcat and a bald eagle and everything. I'm just outside of my community the day I was evacuated from the wildfire. So that was ultimately stopped that project and kind of altered my life. I lost my business and was really affected by that, and was given the opportunity to work with the Red Cross during the re-entry period and the 1 year and 2 year anniversary of the wildfire. And I recorded over 200 testimonials of people who were affected by wildfires. And during that time, I really wanted to make a project or a film that we could use as a mental health conversation starter.
And I think, for folks that are not familiar with what happened in Fort McMurray, can you talk a little bit about, because basically they had to evacuate the
whole city. Yeah. So, it's a small town in the middle of the Boreal Forest. So we're completely surrounded by trees, and there's only one road out of the town. And about 88,000 people that day, the entire town was evacuated. And wildfires are very common in this area. So, even a week before, I had heard because I had done a lot of work with the city, that, this was going to happen. And I was like, and it didn't. And then the day of, I get a call from forestry, and they're like, you better get home and get your cameras and all your hard drives out of the house, because we're going to be evacuated. So right away we turned around and went back to the town, and as soon as we got there, we weren't able to get in. It was already in evacuation. So we were stuck at the airport for several hours, and then the fire came across the road. It turned to several more hours, and eventually we were able to get to the near city, which is about 4 hours away. But everyone's running out of gas. There's not enough gas in the city. No one's prepared for this. And it definitely felt like kind of an apocalyptic moment. And we were separated from the town for several months. And and it was just, when I came back, there was a lot of suicides during that time, and and I was struggling too, because, I have this opportunity. I'm getting ready to make my first big feature film with someone I idolize. And I've sunk, everything also I have into this. And then it's taken away. So I had a lot of selfish feelings at the time of like, how can this happen to me? I'm such a good person. And then I got this great opportunity to work with the Red Cross, and I started healing, and all those selfish feelings I had went away, because, when you're filming a family and a child's talking about everything he lost in his bedroom, or an Indigenous person is talking about losing their way of life, because even if we rebuild the house, the trees and animals don't come back, a fur trader, and, or a teacher's gutting a classroom and throwing out all the mascots and everything from 20 years of the school. And I healed through it. It was really just an amazing experience. And that is why I wanted to do this and use animation as a way to soften these stories. And ultimately, I'd done a lot of work for Vice and other media companies, and I felt my community wasn't properly represented. So here was a way to use animation to tell these stories for children. And I was such a lover of creature comforts. So really, I loved animation. I loved all those shorts growing up. And I would always watch all the Oscar shorts. And I knew about creature comforts. It was one of my faves. And I was like, wow, I could use that simple idea and, ingest it into the story of what it was like for animals to be evacuated from the forest. And instead of focusing on the actual fire, we'll focus on what it's like to come back and rebuild as a community. And, I started this with no intention of getting any of these actors. And ultimately, the shared experience of Paradise and, what was happening in BC and Australia all brought this incredible cast together. And it was just a surreal journey. So I came to learn about animation at Spark in 2018. And I wanted to at the time, hire a company, and I wasn't really that familiar with animation. So I thought, what a great way to learn about this. I'm going to go to Spark. And that day changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah, because leading up to this, animation, clearly you loved animation, but it was not the medium that you were working in, right?
No, not at all. I had always wanted to go to animation school. I wasn't really, but I never had the money back in the day when I was, younger. And I'd always looked at VFS, and it was just an expensive thing when I was in my 20s. And so I wasn't able to do it. And I wasn't really that into drawing or anything like that, but I just loved animation. To me, the craft of it. And I was really into stop motion. I thought, wow, it'd be cool to do this. So then I actually raised some money. I hired an animation company before I even came there, and they took all the money and never did anything with it. So then I was in a position, I was like, okay, I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to sell all my cameras. I'm going to go to animation school. I should try and learn about animation. I kind of had that in the back of my head, but I wasn't really sure. So, and I knew not that much. So I came to Spark to learn, and I was so inspired in 2018 that night I signed up for Vancouver Film School, and really changed the direction of my life. After that, I actually at 3:00 in the morning, I signed up. I'm in Vancouver in my hotel. And I remember like the next day being like, okay, I guess like I should sell my home, and like this, I should make this project and learn how to animate it. And again, still, over my head. But I was so, blinded by passion after your film festival that this is what I wanted to do.
So let's talk a little bit about this. So, this fire has happened. It's been a couple of years. You've been ruminating this idea of doing a film to tell the story of relocation. And it's really for a theme that's really dark. The film is very uplifting, and the story that you're telling is very uplifting. It's very joyous and very much a tale of community and coming together in a time of difficulty. And I'm curious because, so it's been a couple of years, you have this passion, you want to make this project, and you literally give up everything in your life to do this. I mean, that's to me, that's such a leap of faith. Can you talk a little bit about?
Yeah, it was a heavy decision because I had this video production company and this drone inspection company. I was one of the first person to kind of start an inspection company that would stick drones in remote areas, and so I had a good thing going. It was really affected by the wildfire, but I had partners, and like I said, like, I'm going to sell the business, I'm going to sell my house, and I'm going to move to Vancouver, and I'm going to try this. And everyone at the time was like, but you're not into drawing, or you don't know anything about animation. Like, what are you doing? I was like, don't worry. 3D animation, you don't have to be a great artist. Even though I always wanted when I was young to be a cartoonist or something like that. But, I wasn't, other than like, traditional filmmaking or videography, I wasn't really into the arts as much, but I really wanted to commit myself. And, I kind of felt like I was meant to do this in a way, like this story. It's just like, I always overcommit. I thought at the time, I was like, this will be a year. I'll go to VFS. I'll do the project there. I'll come out and we'll be done, and of course, it took many more years than that. And, but, just coming and learning about your festival was really kind of the game changer for me, because it inspired me. And like, I'm a person, like, if I get inspired, like, I changed my life. Before I studied business, and I was working at a bank about when I was 22, and I was, just finished my mortgage broker course. And I seen a speech by Kevin Smith live at the Edmonton International Film Festival. And the next day I quit my job, bought a video camera, and said, I'm going to be a filmmaker. So I'm like, if I get inspired, it's like, it's happening. I can't go back.
That's so amazing. So can you talk a little bit about, so now you're at film school and you're starting to develop this project. Mm-hmm. What does that look like for you as someone that, as you say, is not really artistically inclined? How do you start to put together not only the concept, because clearly that was something that you already had in the back of your mind, but the look of the project and how you're actually going to put this together?
Yeah, the great thing about VFS is you do kind of 6 months of traditional school, and then you have 6 months to work on a short film. So through that, I learned the process of like storyboarding and character design, and I really became obsessed. And I was actually working on like kind of 2 projects. I had this little alien project about 2 aliens that couldn't have a baby, so they decided to abduct a baby earthling. And at night, I would always work on because at first I kind of got there and I told a bunch of animators, I was like, hey, we can all animate this film together. And I think the school was like, no, like, everyone came here to get jobs and, you're messing all that up. So you do your own project on your own time. So I was like, okay, fine. So at night, I would work all night on back home again. I do all the storyboards and same thing I was doing in class. I would take that knowledge and use it for my film because I thought, if this takes, at the time I was telling myself, it's like, okay, this will take me 6 months a year. If I just focus, I can do it all myself. And then I realized like, no, it took me like a year to finish, honestly, 30 minutes of storyboards. So by the time I graduated, I had like the whole animatic done and all the character designs. And I had great mentors there who I would show my character designs, get feedback, and they were really kind to me and helped kind of bring this to life. And Keith Blackmore, my history of animation teacher, was like incredible to me, and I loved his class. And I was really into Nick Parks, and he told me to go to the Spark Festival when I was there, and I got a chance to meet him. And Nick gave me like 20 minutes of his time to talk about my film, and he probably thought I was crazy, but he was just so kind to me. And so that kind of, keeps you going, right, when you get that feedback. And then ultimately I studied Mark DePay when I was in Keith's class. And, you do this kind of week on ILM, and Mark's like, one of the two guys who did the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, and just a total legend. And so I'm studying him. And then, fast forward a couple months after I graduate school, I get a chance to go meet Jeremy Renner and go to his house and record with him. It's a surreal experience. And a couple nights later, through mutual other connections, I meet Mark DePay. And so now I have the knowledge to be like, I know everything about you, Mark. And I just, pour out my heart and tell him, how much, I idolize him, and, what a great, what a legend he is in the visual effects community. And ultimately I asked to like send him the animatic because I need help. I'm like, I can't, I'm getting quotes for anywhere from like $600,000 to $1.2 million to make like, 30 minutes of animation in Vancouver. So the prices were all over the map, and I don't have any money. So, and I also realized at this point after graduating school, I was like, it'll take me a long time to do 30 minutes of animation. It's like my idea of 1 year. It's like, no, this might be like 10 years. So if I'm lucky. So ultimately, like, I told Mark the story, and he was just so great of like, okay, I'm going to help you find the team to do this, and we're going to make this happen. And really just the shared experience of Paradise, a lot of the actors too, Kim Basinger, she lost her home in the Oscar in the wildfire. Martin Short drove down, he was evacuated in his house from Malibu and drove his car down. Everything's packed in. He records that day. Jeremy Renner's best friend lost everything in the fire. He even became a firefighter through this experience, volunteer firefighter, and started donating fire trucks away. So it's like, it was a real surreal experience where a lot of the California community, they believed in this project, and and they all chipped in, they all donated their time. Everyone is doing this out of the goodness of their heart to help, my little community. And it was a dream come true.
So I'm curious, before we get to casting and everything, I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that, because the film is almost 30 minutes long, and you were aware that this was going to be a very difficult task. Did you ever consider shortening it, making it shorter at any point? Did you think, I can't do this, I can't do this in 10 years, I need to look at
Yes. So when I went to VFS, I was like, I just wrote a 10-minute script. So it was way more attainable. I was like, 10 minutes, you can do it. I've seen others, they say in 6 minutes, they did in a year, I can do this, right? So I believed it. But the problem, what happened was I also started working with CMHA and a lot of other mental health professionals, because I wanted to really say that this is a tool. So I had, over like 30 mental health professionals review the script. And with that, what happened was they were like, we need to add more characters to better represent your community. And we came up with all sorts of ideas of, background characters and little things that we could do to include in a discussion guide to help children and families understand fires and to talk about it afterwards. So what happened was my script kept growing and growing and growing. And then by the time the schools are like, this is great, I'm at 30 minutes. So now I'm like, oh no, like, this is great, but I can never do this on my own, right? So. Okay,
so let's talk a little bit. So now you have the script, you have the cinematic for a 30-minute short film. Mm-hmm. Where do you even start? Like, clearly you're somebody that's very outgoing, and you're resourceful. So let's talk a little bit about this process of trying to get the project made. Where do you start now that you have something that
I start right away just submitting it to studios. I Google all the studios in Vancouver, and I just start cold calling them of like, hey, I would love to work with you on this independent project. Can I get a quote on a budget of what it would take to make this movie? And I talk to everyone, and one great company I go sit down with is actually Titmouse. And I start talking with the VP and Kevin Gamble. I think he's moved on since, but I start talking to Kevin, and he actually, through that, I think, Spark was around the corner. Like, it was a couple of days, I was in Vancouver at the right time. So he educates me. He's like, okay, there's this film festival going on, and if you're looking for something to do, and I was like, great. So that, and I was already getting quotes that I realized that were going to be like way too high for me probably to pull off. But still, I was like, okay, I went to the film festival, and then I was so inspired. And that's where I learned like all about VFS and other schools and animators. And I meet so many people. I spend the whole, week watching the movies. And then I decided that night, after night one, it was when we did the Kobe Bryant short film. Mm-hmm. You had the panel with, one of the most legendary animators. Yes, thank you. And, he's doing the panel, and I was blown away. I was on this high. I can't even describe it. So that night, I decided to just sell my home, and I applied to VFS, and I was like, I'm going to animate. I'll just do it. That's,
But so what I mean is, like, so after graduation, right?
Okay.
So yes. Animatic.
Yes.
So where do you go from there? Because,
Okay. So I try and get all these quotes, and I realize like this is impossible. And, but I keep getting great voices. So what has happened, even when I was in school, like I flew down to Ed Asner and I record with him, I have to ask time off, and I'm like, I'm going to go meet Ed Asner. They're like, are you just lying? Like, it's like,
can we talk about this? Like the fact that
yeah,
it was randomly going to call Ed Asner. How do you even do that?
Well, I'm blinded by passion. So I would, like, even years ago, before I even had a lot of these yeses, like I would just randomly send messages to Catherine O'Hara and Michael J. Fox and try and get them in. And I honestly just got rejected over and over. But I did have a relationship with Tom Green prior. So Tom became my first voice. And then Noah McDonald and Harlan Williams and John Schneider, who's Rob Schneider's brother, he was working with Tom, and he was going to be the producer of this feature I was doing. So he had this relationship with a lot of people in Hollywood. And ultimately, I would just dream of someone. I would be like, I love Catherine O'Hara. I love Michael J. Fox. How can we get to them? And we would just pitch, randomly, whether it be the agent, we figure out someone on, Schitt's Creek to get a hold of. And one by one, we would just assemble this cast, but it took years. So while I'm in school, I'm still attaching people, like Jeremy, and I'm trying to tell like some of my professors, I need time to go to the weekend and go meet Jeremy Renner. They're like, well, we don't believe you, and we're going to fail you on your assignment. But so ultimately, I build this cast, I have something going, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. Honestly, I was looking at, everything from Fiverr to, message boards of like, maybe I can get people just to donate their time, even from some Reddit forums of like, we all build this community project. And at this point, I have kind of like 10 of our voices. So I'm like, I got some names that I can say like, hey, we got something here. I got an animatic. Let's make this independent movie. And we'll just use this as a conversation starter, give it away for free and see what happens. So that was my plan. But then I get an opportunity to meet Mark DePay, and we go for dinner. And I pitch him this project, and he really becomes the game changer of putting this together and helping me recruit animators in Argentina who also have been affected by wildfires. And through that, it's that shared experience that brings everyone in. It's and I didn't have a lot of the cast, but I had this song that was written by 2 Grammy Award winners. So Walter and Charlie Midnight. Walter did the music for all the music for Mariah Carey and the Titanic song, that won the Academy Award. And he did music for Aladdin and Hercules. He came together with Charlie Midnight, who did like the Bodyguard song. So these are 2 legends. They wrote this original song. So I just have this, one track of like Walter playing at the piano, but it's very moving. And ultimately Jeremy later sings it. But at that time, it was enough to kind of show Mark. And he's like, okay, you're going to finish the cast. You get, with John, you reach out to all the people you love. I think we have a great story. I'll help you on the animation, and we'll turn this into something. So, and that was about 2020. And we literally finished the movie about like 2 days before the Edmonton International Film Festival. So like, the final version of just mix and master and everything. And, we worked with Sharp in North Vancouver. And again, they gave us such a kind discounts. So everyone was like kind of, the shared experience of fires again really kind of brought this to life.
So it really is a community film for community. Can you talk a little bit about, what the life of it is now that it's out there and kind of making the rounds through the festival circuit and getting seen by people and being shown in communities that, are affected by fires and by other natural disasters?
Yeah, I hope I look at this as a longevity project. I think we can use this in communities, as you said, affected by wildfires around the world, but also the shared experience of COVID brings mental health to the forefront. I noticed when we started this project 5 years ago with, the mental health executives and CMHA, I realized we couldn't even say mental health. We said PTSD. And because of COVID now, we can publicly talk about this. And I think that shared experience really brings the project together. And this is the first time, the Canadian Red Cross is now working with the American Red Cross and the Australian Red Cross. So they're going to release the music as a way to raise funds for the next disaster. I've had talks from distributors about releasing this every year on World Mental Health Day as a way to create awareness, not only in Canada, but in North America. And recently I got funded to put this in Cree and Dene languages as well, subtitles. I want to put this in French and Spanish and Russian, a lot of countries that have recently gone through, exactly what my community has gone through. And really just, inspire people to talk about mental health and realize that it's okay to not be okay.
Can you talk a little bit about, how is the film received in Fort McMurray and what has it been like for you personally sharing this film that was inspired by your community, sharing it with that community?
It's been so overwhelming. The positive feedback has just brought me to tears almost every single day since we've shown it. And even over the last couple of months, we've worked with the local firefighters and all the local organizations and mental health collectives to review the movie and really make sure that the community is proud of this project. The one thing I didn't want to do is just release this and then people feel like, oh, Mike sold our story to Hollywood or things like that. It's like, no, this is our story. And I also wanted to, growing up in Fort McMurray, a lot of people, paint it with the oil brush. It's an oil community, and it is, but there's also a lot of people that, don't work in the oil sands. And either way, I wanted to focus not on industry, but on just this idea of a community. And that alone, I think, it's a local story with a global message.
So what's next for you?
So I wrote the feature film that I wrote before the wildfire. I am now doing that as an animated feature. And I'm working again with Mark DePay, and we brought on Wes Takashi, who worked at ILM again, and brought in incredible team of animators to help this. And I have attached some big names to play these key roles. I shouldn't say it just because there's still some contractual things, but we have, ultimately, I wrote this survival story about kind of based on Bear Grylls, a survival TV show. And that person dies at the beginning of the TV show. And the rest of the movie is about his best friend and cameraman, Wild Bill. And Wild Bill decides to do one last adventure in memory of his friend and scatter his ashes in the Rocky Mountains. And unfortunately, he's filmed them for years, but slowly he ends up picking himself apart. And it's kind of very much documentary style, similar to kind of what I hope to do with, this one was a little documentary style. So there's elements of that, but I'm looking to do this on a bigger scale and, the first feature. So brought in the cast. We've had a couple distribution offers, but so far I'm just excited to do another project and work with this incredible team again. Yeah.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, congratulations. And I cannot wait to see what Spark again. Hopefully
thank you so much. Film. I will. Yes, that is where I will bring it. You'll be the first spot. Yes.
Yay.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Mike. Congratulations to you and the team, and best of luck.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an honor to talk to you today.